Welcome to Mental Junk Food, where we talk about all things comics, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, pop culture, and everything in between. And today, we're going to be talking about Atari VCS. And let me tell you, I have plenty of questions about the Atari VCS. Let's go ahead and get into it. Now, first of all, there's a lot of videos going on right now about the Atari VCS as far as, is it a scam? That's the question people's asking. They're not even saying, is it a scam? They're saying that Atari VCS is a scam. There we go. And I have some questions about that. Now, I have some questions about the Atari VCS, just all over the place. So, with that in mind, here's a couple that I'm going to spitball off the top of my head. What is the Atari VCS? Is it a scam? Did they lie? Is it even coming out? And why is it doing so well? Okay, and I think these are pretty good questions. Answering or attempting to answer the first question is, what is the Atari VCS? Now, for those that don't know, Atari is a company. It's been around off and on throughout the decades. They were one of the first video game consoles, and a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia and great memories about Atari, especially about the Atari 2600 console, which had a lot of classic games on them, a lot of arcade games at the time. I think, what is it, like Centipede and maybe like Pac-Man, Pitfall, stuff like that. And, for those that don't know, a lot of these Atari 2600 games that are not, if you're somebody that's born in the 90s and you're not familiar with Atari or Atari games, the best way I can describe it is first video games were released to market when people had access to these games, when people played them in the arcades and got the first consoles in their own. A lot of these games look like stickmen, like Pong. You've heard of Pong, right? Which is basically all it is. It's a ball. It's a two-player game, and one player on one side, you have like this bar. It goes up and down. You control it with your controller, and somebody else has got a bar. It goes up and down, and you just kind of knock this ball back and forth. And that should give you kind of an idea of the graphics capability of the Atari 2600. And I say that respectfully. I'm not trying to trash the console or anything like that, because a lot of people enjoyed those games. They have a lot of fun gameplay to them, the ones that are actually good. But, why this is relevant, I'm trying to explain what the Atari VCS is for people that are not familiar with. So Atari, basically, that's what Atari is known for. And Atari has had a tumultuous history. Is that the best way to phrase it? It's had a difficult go at things, because at some point the gaming industry kind of collapsed, and Atari was one of the victims of that. Since that time, Atari has been bought and sold by different people. So there's been multiple owners of Atari. And probably one of the last legit attempts at releasing a console was the Atari Jaguar, which is a pretty cool system in my opinion. Some of you may differ with that, but it's a pretty cool little console. But it didn't make it, and that's when Atari just gave up making consoles altogether. It's only in recent years has there been interest in Atari releasing more hardware. Up to this point, they kind of piddled and paddled with different games, but now they're interested in the hardware market. And then finally, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, they've come out with a console. A lot of people know Atari VCS as the Atari box, because when they first marketed it and first started hinting at releasing a new console, they called it the Atari box. And then they changed it to Atari VCS. They've launched a Indiegogo campaign, and this thing is a big, big success. There's a lot of doubters that did not think the Atari VCS was going to do well on Indiegogo. They thought that it was just going to die a quick and painless death. I guess. I don't know. But the naysayers have been proven wrong. 10,534 backers as of right now, that will change, have contributed to the Atari VCS Indiegogo campaign, and to the effect of $2 million, specifically $2,763,448 million. Okay, probably didn't say that right, but you get the idea. Almost $3 million. The numbers are still rising. Almost $3 million, and they still got roughly about 20 days left. So I expect Atari to kind of peter out probably about $3,500,000, maybe $4 million before their time is up. Unless they get some really, really bad press, which is still possible, and they already have. But it could get worse, but we'll see. So now you're up to speed on what the Atari VCS is. It's basically I don't want to say a micro console, but it kind of fits in that. Its hardware capabilities, the stuff that allows it to play games and stuff like that, it's kind of limited. So if you're expecting to play a lot of the modern games that's played on PlayStation and Xbox One, you're probably going to be disappointed because it's probably not going to be able to play a lot of those games based on the hardware specs, and you can check those out on Indiegogo. You just have to scroll down the page and you eventually see them. So that is what Atari VCS is, and essentially it is a retro system that plays classic 2600 games. Even though they do advertise themselves as a console that plays modern games as well, but they've not said what modern games that they can play, which is interesting. The second question is Atari VCS, is it a scam? Is it a scam? Now, before I attempted to answer this question, I actually had to go look it up and try to get my ducks in a row to make sure that I'm not talking out my butt, which is something I often do. Don't make me pull an Ace Ventura here, but scam. So I looked it up, and it is a dishonest scheme, a fraud. The verb part of that is a swindle. A swindle. A swindle. They actually give an example here online. A guy that scams the elderly out of their savings. Oh boy, is that what's going on here? Is Atari the company? Are they scamming the elderly out of their savings for nostalgia? No. Well, I'm going to answer that question. I don't believe Atari VCS is like scamming people. A lot of you is going to disagree with that. Now, as questions about them being dishonest and lying, that's just something different altogether. But as far as like scamming, I do believe that the people behind Atari are sincere about delivering on the promises that they're making. With that said, though, if they're actually going to be able to deliver those promises, is something altogether different. So there's a lot of videos going on right now about the prospect, the idea that Atari has scammed a lot of people, at least 10,000 people that backed the Indiegogo project. Now there's an article on Kit Guru, and I'll leave a link to it down below, where they talk about gameplay footage that had been faked. So, if you go to the Atari Indiegogo campaign, they should have a video or two up there showing gameplay footage of what the Atari VCS can do. The sad thing is, it appears that the footage has been faked. So let me go ahead and read you a bit of this article. And this is from Kit Guru. It's written by a guy named Ryan Burgess. And I quote, "Over the course of the year, Atari has been trying to get a new home console off the ground in the form of the Atari VCS. The crowdfunding campaign advertised a few things. It even showed off gameplay. Unfortunately, it looks at least like some of the footage shown was faked. The crowdfunded Atari VCS console showed footage of Tempest 4000 running on their machine during the campaign, but it turns out that the creator of that game has no knowledge of the port or even how the game is even running on a Linux-based machine. Llamasoft is well known for their work on Tempest 2000 on the Atari Jaguar. The studio has been active for a while, with their most recent release being Polybus for PSVR and Oculus Rift. They are currently developing Tempest 4000 for the PC and console, with Atari as the publisher. Now, in the Atari VCS trailer on Indiegogo, it shows Tempest 4000 running natively on the Atari VCS system, but this is impossible, as there is no Linux version of the game. As this Reddit investigation shows, the creator of Tempest 4000 has even confirmed he didn't even know the Atari VCS and was also dark on the game being ported to it, unquote. Now, there's a little bit more left about this article on, kitguru.com, or no, it's kitguru.net. My apologies. And I'll leave a link down below for you to check it out for yourself. So, in a nutshell, Atari's got gameplay footage of not one but two games showing them playing these games on the console. But when people actually looked into things and investigated things and talked to the creators and looked at the footage more closely, they realized that this just isn't happening. Now, Atari runs on Linux. Now, for those that don't know what Linux is an operating system. And basically, every electronic device has an operating system. Your computer, your laptop, your tablet, whatever. A lot of computers and tablets, what have you, they run on Windows Okay, that's basically the brains of your computer. That's what makes it work. Well, Linux is an operating system. It's a brain for various devices, and it's free, by the way. Anybody can install Linux on just about anything if they, with a little bit of know-how. And so Atari VCS has chosen to put the Linux brain, the Linux operating system in their thing. So that's what makes their machine run. That's how it works. And Linux is not very friendly with a lot of Windows programs. So you can't necessarily play a lot of Windows stuff on a Linux machine. And that's what Atari is. It's a Linux machine. And one of those things, oddly enough, is Tempest 4000. And there was a big brouhaha about it. And eventually, I think Atari, unless I'm mistaken, admitted that they were playing a Tempest 4000 on a PC. So if you was to ask me, is the Atari VCS a scam? I'm still going to say no, because I believe in my heart that they sincerely believe they're going to be able to get the rights to use Tempest 4000, and that they're going to be able to port it over to Atari VCS, because the graphics on that is not like mind-blowingly awesome, and I mean no insult when I say that. Just looking at things objectively, it shouldn't be that hard to port. If you're asking me the next question, did the Atari people lie? The answer is yes on that. They are definitely being a little dishonest and a little shady. A lot of companies do this. Sometimes they'll put out products kind of ahead of time, not necessarily on shelves, but like start advertising for products that are not even built yet, to build brand awareness, to get people excited about them, so that when these products do release, people go out and buy it. If Atari went and put Atari VCS on the shelves like 10 months ago, nobody know what that was. And a lot of people wouldn't buy it because they wouldn't be aware that there's an Atari VCS out there. So they got to build brand awareness. They got to get people excited about it. So I understand why they did what they did, but it doesn't make it okay. You know what I mean? The thing is, they got caught. And a lot of people on the internet nowadays, they will scrutinize every little single thing that you say and do. It was bound to happen. They got caught. And so they're getting their PR spanking right now, and we'll see how they recover from this. So the next question on the list on my handy dandy notebook is the Atari VCS, is it coming out? A lot of people believe it's a scam, and so some people are questioning whether it'll even come out. And yes, I really do believe the Atari VCS will come out, definitely. How am I so confident about this? Because it's not like a mind-blowing console, okay? This is basically a micro console in a much bigger shell, okay? I bet if you had an Atari VCS in your hand, and it probably weighs less than 3 pounds. You could hit somebody in the head with it and it wouldn't hurt them. It'd probably break in half. The specs of it, you can check them out on Indiegogo on the Indiegogo campaign and scroll down. It takes a while, but you'll see the specs, and they're not particularly impressive. It's not going to be able to play a lot of the modern games. So that's one of the other things advertised for the Atari VCS. It's going to be able to play some modern stuff, but they don't say what those modern things are. But if you're going to expect to play PlayStation games or Xbox One games on this bad boy, you're going to be disappointed. The best they can hope for is playing a lot of Android-based games. A lot of stuff that you play on your phones that are knockoffs of popular games. That's their best hope. And then from there, maybe have some way to upgrade the software to where it can play more modern games. But I don't think the team at Atari has really thought things really out that well. I think this was a test to gauge market interest. I don't think they really expected it to do as well as it did. I think they're kind of caught with their pants down, because now they're going to have to deliver. And I do believe they will deliver. And I do believe people will have a physical console in their hand that contributed to the Indiegogo campaign or go out and buy it in stores. So I do believe that part of it is legit. And again, part of the reason why I believe that it's legit, and I didn't really explain this because I talked in circles, is that there's nothing about the hardware that's particularly impressive. Anybody with a little bit of know-how can make a brand new console in their bedroom, 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, PlayStation worthy, maybe even a PlayStation 2 worthy console in their bedroom. All they have to do is go buy the guts off of Amazon and eBay and stuff like that, start putting stuff together, and install Android or Linux, and there you go, brand new console. And the specs for the Atari VCS doesn't look that particularly impressive, and more likely they're going to manufacture this in China, which is going to bring cost way down. And they're using a free OS, which is Linux, and so they really don't really have that many problems with launching this thing. And again, they're launching it with Atari 2600 games. So a lot of a lot of those games they own. I don't know if they're going to use any of the third party games upon release. I imagine that at some point they're going to negotiate deals with people to get them on there. It shouldn't be that difficult. But you get the idea. It's not going to be that difficult to put this fine, outstanding product on shelves. Yeah. The question is, the question everybody should ask themselves, if it even really matters, is it going to be successful? And the answer to that question, I believe, in my opinion, is no. I think that it will have sales, but not enough to really mean anything. Because what the Atari VCS offers is nothing no different than what Ouya offered. Now, for those that don't know, Ouya was a micro console that was launched in 2012 on Kickstarter. And it was really impressive Kickstarter because it raised $8.5 million, which is impressive for any company that's unknown with a bunch of unknown people working for it. But they got $8.5 million. They lasted a couple years. I actually own a Ouya. I did like the console. It was neat, but it had a limited selection of games. That's one of the biggest things that killed it. That and the fact that that they had a little bit, I don't want to say shady, but they mishandled their finances really, really, really bad. And so Ouya shut down in 2015 because they were in debt up to their eyeballs, and they eventually sold the company to Razer Inc. And Razer discontinued all the hardware, and they just basically took the brains of Ouya and the online store, and they're going to use that for their future products, which I'm not even sure that they've done much with that either. So that was the death of Ouya, and this seems a bit like Ouya 2.0, the Atari VCS, and I don't think that's a far stretch to say that at all. It's very, 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 very similar, and I expect it to have much of the same fate. It wouldn't surprise me that if Atari manages this well and they manage to maintain it well and build slow momentum, then this could lead to a new console. But I don't know anything about the people that run this new Atari company, and so I'm kind of skeptical. I mean, they've already kind of botched a few things. I feel like they should have had a few more ducks in a row in order before they launched this, because you need more than just Atari 2600 games to make this thing popular, because you can play Atari 2600 games on your phone, on your tablet, on your PC. Heck, you could probably play them on Xbox or PlayStation or whatever. I mean, they require almost zero graphics capability to play them, and they've been around for so long. I mean, like, it's not really a thing. There's not really a big demand for Atari 2600 games. The only reason I think that they're offering them on this console is because they've got nothing to offer other than that. And I know Atari has made other games, newer generation games, and I'm surprised that they've not tried to do something with these games on this new console, but I think that's just part of them releasing things maybe a little bit too early before they were ready. But I do believe people will get a physical console. I do believe it will fail in the end. So that brings us to maybe like one last question, So you got on the Indiegogo, them raising $2 million, probably about $3 to $4 million before the Indiegogo campaign is going to be over. But currently it's $2,763,448 million, okay, by 10,000 backers, which is pretty good. Very, very good, actually. So the last question that I want to pose and attempt to answer is, why is the Indiegogo campaign for Atari VCS so successful? I mean, all they got on there is basically a bunch of 2600 games, which anybody can get anywhere, right? So why are people buying this console that costs like $200 or $300? Well, I think the answer to that is 4 to 5 different reasons, or it comes down to 4 or 5 different groups of people that are buying the console. First of all, you got nostalgia people that collect consoles, people that like the idea of owning a new Atari, people that are caught up in the 2600 era that may have grew up with it or came to love it later on, and they just want to get this new Atari based solely on that. So that's one group of people that are buying the Atari VCS. Another group of people that's buying the Atari VCS is people that are not really astute or not really well informed on a lot of stuff that goes on in the gaming industry. These are people that are just kind of I don't know if passive gamers is the right term, but the people that are basically they don't really play games a lot. They may play off and on and stuff like that, but they don't really read news articles about games coming out or anything like that. If they see an advertisement on TV, they might go out and buy it, that sort of thing. And these people probably get on Indiegogo and they see this big ad for like, oh, an Atari. I remember that. Atari, my uncle used to have an Atari. That's pretty cool. The company's come back out with a new system. Wow. And so these people, just because of another nostalgia effect, they're going to go buy an Atari to, because they don't know much about game systems and a lot of frauds have been perpetrated, such as the Coleco Chameleon. And for those who don't know the history on that, short and brief, basically a new company got started up. They bought the rights to the name Coleco Chameleon. And at some game show, expo, thingamajigger, they had a workable, playable demo of the Coleco Chameleon. I put that in quotation marks, okay? Because when people actually looked at the Coleco Chameleon closely, they noticed that the plastic shell, if you were to open it up or peek inside, it was actually had the guts of a Super Nintendo. So people were playing Super Nintendo games inside of this Coleco Chameleon shell, and so it was a farce. And it's very, very similar to what basically Atari VCS is doing on their Indiegogo campaign, because when you watch the videos, they admit that the games are being played on a PC, but they make it appear that the Atari VCS is playable at this point in time, when in fact, more than likely, it's just a demo mock-up. It's just nothing more than a plastic shell with controllers that are probably hollow. They have no guts, electronics in them whatsoever, and so these are meant to be props to take photos and stuff like that with, to get people excited. They're not actually playable devices because they got no electronics in them whatsoever. So anyway, this group of people that I'm referring to that are donating to the Atari VCS, in my opinion, I believe that they're the second group of people. They're not really familiar with a lot of stuff that happens in the gaming industry, and they're not really familiar with the concept that a lot of that there's been a couple of consoles that's been released that have been a little bit dubious about their business practices or been outright scams. So like you got things like Ouya, which was run poorly. You got Coleco Chameleon, which was an outright scam, and there's been other companies that's pulled some shady stuff. So these people are being taken advantage of because they just have a lack of knowledge of the industries. Which brings us to a third group of people that are investing in the Atari VCS, and these are people that have, in my opinion, a hunger for a new competitor in the console market, marketplace or whatever. Sure, there is Nintendo, and there is PlayStation, and there is Xbox One. I get that. And people may be saying, well, we got plenty right now. Why do we need a fourth competitor in the market? Well, I don't know. I think people want more diversity in games that you can play. A more wide variety in games, I should say. People want more wide variety of systems to play on, because people just want something new and different to come along. Even if it's something old and familiar, rebranded in something brand new. And Atari, I'm not going to say it has the potential to become that, because I don't think it will. But hypothetically speaking, it could. But I think that's another group of people that's donating to the Indiegogo campaign, making it successful, in hopes that Atari can become once again a competitor in the hardware market, in the console market for game consoles, because there is a hunger for another competitor to come in to add something different. Because basically, in my opinion, Nintendo for many years now has kind of dropped the ball. Yeah, it's true, they are innovators. A lot of cool concepts and stuff like that, with their sensor bars and all these different things and all these gimmicky things that are pretty cool, and now they got the Nintendo Switch, where they're trying some more things where you can basically take your console with you everywhere that you go. But having said that, Nintendo doesn't really feel like the company that it used to be when it was an NES and when it was a Super Nintendo and that sort of thing. Because back in those days, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, the games that you could play on those was a wide variety. They had kiddie games. They had more adult themed games, like Contra and stuff like that, and it kind of felt more like what Xbox is now. But Nintendo throughout the years and the last decade or two have moved away from that mode of thinking, and now they basically, every game that they make is purely for all ages, so somebody that's really young can play the games, somebody that's really old, and blah blah blah, and that makes sense. On paper it seems like a wider demographic would equal more money, but I don't think that's necessarily true. And what they end up doing is they alienate a lot of people that like a certain type of gameplay. So when you think of Nintendo, you don't really think of third-person shooters, and that's one of the most popular types of gameplay in the gaming industry. So people don't really buy a Nintendo to play Call of Duty or Battlefield or any of that stuff, right? And I really believe that's Nintendo's fault because of the way that they market their system. They always have a lot of things that look like kiddie games, and so that really turns people off that like a little bit more wide variety in games that are available, And so anyway, the reason I say all this, in my opinion, that's the reason there's a hunger for another competitor, whether it be Atari or Sega or what have you, or somebody brand new. As to whether that'll happen or not, that's probably not, but you never know, surprises come along all the time. That's, in my opinion, in a long-winded way, why I believe Atari VCS has been successful as an Indiegogo campaign. But once the Indiegogo campaign's over and once it's in stores and stuff like that, I think it will do decent for the first year, and then we'll see how it goes after that. But I predict that it's not going to do too hot because they have to get modern games on there, because retro games are not enough to make this console survive. What do you guys and gals think about the Atari VCS? Do you believe it's a scam? Do you believe that they lied? Do you believe it's even coming out? Why do you think that it's doing so well on the Indiegogo campaign? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Please let me know in the comment section down below. And I do read in each and every single comment. And, like I usually say, a lot of your all's comments tend to be a lot more insightful, a lot more well-informed than a lot of stuff that I have to offer. And I think, a lot of people that read your comments really appreciate your insight as well, because I think it gives a more balanced viewpoint. So if you have something to say, let me know in the comment section down below. If you liked this video and you found it informative or what have you, please remember to hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to be kept up to date to all my latest shenanigans. This is CB Smallwood, and I will see you in the next video.